Hallo mensen, welkom bij een nieuwe aflevering van Tea with Tali. Vandaag praat ik met een bijzondere dame die in haar jonge jaren al zoveel inzicht en wijsheid heeft vergaard. Kruz uit de Oekraïne. Zij is relatiepsycholoog, gestalttherapeut, traumadeskundige en gepassioneerd begeleider van vrouwen die op zoek zijn naar meer vervulling in hun relaties. We praten over wat emotionele veiligheid echt betekent, hoe je een sterkere relatie met jezelf opbouwt en hoe je patronen kunt doorbreken. Deze aflevering is op afstand en in het Engels, maar laat het je niet weerhouden. Zet je thee klaar. Dit wordt warm, verdiepend en echt. Hi Dana.
Hi, Delita. So nice to see you. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yes, thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you because this is such an interesting topic, in my opinion, and something that a lot of people, at least that I've spoken to, also struggle with. So I'm so excited to get your insights on it and just go back and forth with our thoughts on this topic. So, relationships. Tell me a little bit about yourself first. Where are you from?
Yeah, so I absolutely love the topic of relationships, and that's why I will tell you a bit more why I decided to dedicate my whole life to that. So, speaking about my background, my first degree is in teaching. So originally, I worked as a teacher for a long time. And I saw how students were opening up to me. Like there was this trust that was built between us. And I decided that, okay, I think that I can help people not just with exam preparation or, some academic stuff, but there's something else that I can do for them. So that's why I decided to pursue degree in psychology. And once I received my master's degree in psychology, I continued studying and I received a training in Gestalt therapy. And Gestalt is very, very interesting. It's about our emotions. It's about us being able to feel our emotions rather than turn to alcohol or pills or cigarettes or anything else to just numb whatever we feel. And this is something that happens a lot in people. So why relationships is because I saw working with people, not just as a psychologist or a coach, but also even as a teacher, I saw that whenever a person is healthy, when they're confident, when they are in their best healthy state, they can achieve anything they want. They build good relationships, they succeed in their career. So it doesn't always depend on the outside circumstances. It's about your inner state. It's about your relationship with yourself. And that's the foundation that you can lean on when moving forward in any kind of area in your life. So I received my training in Ukraine, but now I am very happy that I have this opportunity to work with people all around the world, like from all continents. And it's really amazing. I'm very happy that now we have these online meetings. Like I'm so happy that I can connect with you. You're being in the Netherlands and being here in Sweden. And yeah, so that's a little bit about my background and why I want to focus on helping people not just get into better relationship or get another job. It's about helping them get to their healthiest self.
Okay, so it actually what you're saying is it starts within. It starts within yourself, and when you say the relationship with yourself, do you mean how you see yourself, how you interact with yourself? How would you define the relationship with yourself?
I think it's like it includes a lot of things, how you see yourself, how you talk to yourself, how you behave with yourself. Usually people, they expect some kind of good treatment from others. They want to be treated well with their colleagues. They want to be treated well with their partners. But if they think a little bit when they listen to their inner dialogue, that's not exactly usually the kind of treatment that they would want to receive from others. So, so usually how people treat themselves, it starts with their inner dialogue. And it's specifically not about how do I feel about myself when I'm at my highest, when I'm achieving, when my body meets my expectations. It's about how do I talk to myself when I make a mistake, when I don't
I
meet my
see.
own expectations. And like if you were to think, to listen to your inner dialogue, like what does your inner self tell you in those moments when you don't feel good, when you don't feel like you have met your own expectations? What does that inner self tell you?
Yeah, I can totally see where you're coming from. If I look at myself, I think that I would pretty much beat myself up a lot of the times if I don't reach a goal or if I'm feeling down. I would sometimes judge myself a lot for that, or even be upset at myself for judging myself. So there are all these layers of how you can look at yourself and what you say to yourself. And I think you're absolutely right. Like if my friend was going through a hard time, or if my friend wouldn't have met their goals, or my daughter or whoever, I don't think I would beat them up as much as I would do to myself. Why do you think is that we do that to ourselves and not to other people?
That's a really good question, and I like then that this parallel that you mentioned about that you wouldn't tell your daughter something like that, something that you hear in your own mind. And this is one way of establishing a good relationship is before you tell yourself something, think, would I say this thing to the child that I love? And try to focus on yourself and think, do I really want to tell these stories? And where it comes from, usually it comes from childhood. So this inner narrative, this story that we're telling ourselves that we beat ourselves up, but we don't do that to other people, it's a survival strategy. So at some point in our childhood, when love was conditional, when we were praised for something that we did well, and love was withdrawn if we didn't meet our parents' expectations. This is when we learned, okay, I have to be good, otherwise I won't be loved. What can I do to be good? I have to constantly experience that tension, remind myself that I have to be good. If I'm not good, I'm bad. So basically, this relationship to ourselves, it's not really authentic, it's adopted. It's
I see.
adopted from our childhood. And as a child, of course, you don't have that critical thinking. You can't really decide. But as an adult, it's kind of your responsibility to reparent yourself, to rebuild that relationship to yourself.
So what would you say is the first step in doing that?
Well, the first step is to catch that voice of your inner critic, hear that narrative. Whenever you hear that critic talking, don't try to walk away, turn away, smoking, drinking, distracting yourself in any way, but listen. And this is the hardest thing, actually, to not run away, but to sit with your feelings, with your thoughts, hear them, and just awareness itself is a neuro-based intervention because the uh, inner narrative, it's usually automatic. Like we don't catch those thoughts. It happens
Right.
automatically. We're not even aware. But once you're aware, that's step number one. And step number two, think whose voice is that? Your inner critic. Is it your mother's voice? Is it your toxic partner's voice from the past? Who is talking? And there's definitely another voice in yourself. It can be your inner friend, your inner parent that you didn't adopt, but the one that you grew inside you. And then awareness gives you a power of choice. Which voice do I want to listen to?
If we haven't had experiences with another voice, how would we go about changing that voice?
This is a really, really good question because if you have only been in an environment where people criticized you, you don't even know what it's like to be loved unconditionally. You don't even
Yeah.
know, like, is that even possible? So, um, it's definitely important to surround yourself with people who bring the best in you, who support you. And that means getting rid of toxic people, getting rid of those toxic relationships that on the one hand, they're familiar, but familiar
Right.
might feel like it's safe just because
Mhm.
you're used to that, but it doesn't
Sure.
mean that it's healthy. So, number one is being willing to experience something new that might feel dangerous. Your body can send you signals like, we've never done that before.
Hmm.
We know what it's like to be in a toxic relationship, but how does it feel to be in a relationship with somebody who just loves you unconditionally, who doesn't criticize you for those little things? And that could be dangerous. Like rationally, we understand, like, of course, I want to be in a healthy relationship when I'm loved.
Hmm.
But on the physical level, our bodies usually are so used to that unhealthy cycle that just physically it can be hard to
Hmm.
step into that new experience. And have you ever thought, like, have you ever experienced that, okay, this relationship, or even a job or a partner or anything,
Hmm.
this is something new. I'm not sure if I want it. Potentially dangerous.
If I've experienced that, ooh, that's a tricky question, Donna. I think I'm gonna have to have a cup of tea before I
Me
get
too.
cheers. What tea are you drinking today?
But it's just black tea. I like when it's very, very strong. I like with that
Mm.
astringent taste. It also
Okay,
requires
agreed.
a lot of sugar. Not exactly healthy, but
You know
that's a
the
way.
you know the prerequisite of being on this podcast is drinking tea, right? Because
Yeah,
we're having our tea ceremony.
yeah, yeah. And this is a way of self-love. It's not even that things that we do are unhealthy. It's about, do you do them consciously? Do you do
Right.
them because you're coming from the place of, I'm healthy, that's my conscious choice, or do I do it compulsively because I'm trying to get rid of pain? So what I'm saying is my cup full of sugar is a conscious choice.
I get it. I get it. No judgment here.
Right.
Well, to come back to your question, I do have a question about that because, we tend to label things a lot as toxic or narcissistic. That's the big buzzword nowadays, right? Narcissistic relationships. And a lot of people struggle to have healthy relationships. But I think it also starts with, when does a relationship become toxic? How do you actually know that you're in a toxic relationship?
A lot of toxic relationships, they last not because people like experiencing the toxicity, it's because they're not aware. Again, we're coming back to the
Exactly.
awareness. Yeah,
How can you tell? Because, well, let's say I have the experience of being in a toxic relationship, but I didn't really realize it was toxic from the beginning because there were elements of happiness and fun and joy and intimacy and caring and validation. Those things made me feel good. They made me feel happy. They made me look forward to spending time with this individual. And as time went by, I noticed that I started getting more and more unhappier in the relationship. And I started to notice that the interactions were not really feeding me anymore. They weren't giving me validation. They weren't giving me pleasure. They weren't giving me fun. And I started, and I think that's the key thing, I started to dislike myself. So that voice that you were talking about in the beginning, the voice of criticizing yourself and putting yourself down or being hard on yourself, that voice started to get louder in the relationship because of the dynamic that existed between us. What do you think then is the reason that this kind of dynamic will sort of evolve? How does this dynamic come into play?
yeah. And why people continue, why do they settle for that kind of dynamic? And before I answer this question, it's really interesting, and thank you so much for sharing your personal experience. I want to ask you, well, how did that end?
It ended because I finally realized that it wasn't what I deserved. I felt like I deserved a connection with someone where I was valued and appreciated and where there weren't constantly misunderstandings and differences in values. and where we would be more on the same page. This person was constantly misreading my intentions, misreading my words, create different narratives for my actions, and severely criticize me for that. However, it wasn't always like that. It's not like it was 24/7 pain and difficulty and arguments and fights, because whenever I would pull back, there would be a sense of him wanting to repair things or wanting to fix things. So there was this element of not being happy, but at the same time, also not wanting to let go and having this fear of loss. And I think it was from both sides of what if the other person will change? What if it'll get better? And then we give up. So there was this hope of the relationship improving on one hand, but on the other hand, there was the reality of a dynamic that was just not healthy. So at one point, I decided to remove myself from that dynamic. And I have to admit that it took me a while to get to that point and to just really make that decision to not be anymore in that, in that dynamic or relationship.
Right. And the important thing that you mentioned is that it wasn't all bad 24/7. And I think that this is the trickiest part about toxic relationships in general, is the toxicity. It's not all bad. It can be sweet, like my cup of tea has a lot of sugar. It's not exactly the healthiest thing in the world, but it's sweet. And very similar happens in the relationships, because if it was like purely bad, abusive, then perhaps you would have removed yourself from that situation much sooner. But because there's such phenomenon as like breadcrumbing, like I'll give you some love and then it's going to be toxic. But no, it's not really toxic because I'm going to give you some more love. See, we're in a loving relationship. Again, we are all different and each separate story is different. But usually, again, it all comes from our childhood and the concept of what it's like to be loved that we adopted. It often comes from our parent giving us love and say, well, good job, I love you, but, or praising you, loving you, and on the other side, punishing you for something when you don't meet expectations. So then we realized that, okay, I guess love is when I'm loved, plus I experience toxicity from the person I love, from the
I
person
see.
who gives me love sometimes. And because, like you mentioned earlier, because we don't have something different, like we don't even realize that things can be different, that I don't have to suffer in order to be loved sometimes. That's why it's hard for people to truly let go, because they just don't know that things can be different.
So then, what is a healthy relationship? I think you mentioned to me that you're married, right? And
Yes.
I really admire you actually because you're so young, but you have lived in so many countries. You were born in the Ukraine, right? And now you've moved to Sweden. And your husband is Swedish?
No, he's from the US. He was born there.
I see.
Um,
Okay.
So I have been married for 10 years. I'm 31, and
Wow.
honestly, I the reason why I chose to work with relationships with people, helping them, is because I know what it's like to be in a toxic relationship. I mean, not my husband, but I know
I
what
get
it's
it.
like to be in a toxic relationship, why I stayed in that toxic relationship, what it took me to stop it, to remove myself from that situation. And I also have another experience of what it's like to be in a healthy relationship, and not just how to start a healthy relationship, but how to make it sustainable and last for so long. And I feel like I almost have that obligation to help people to get to that place. Yeah. And with my husband, and I can't say that it has always been easy, especially coming from different cultures. I mean, we speak different languages,
Sure.
literally. So that kind of even added to that load that we had to work through in order to get to a healthy stage. And coming coming back to your question of what a healthy relationship looks like, to me, it's when we stay, when we are staying with each other, not just when we are convenient for each other, but also when things are difficult. And when things get difficult, we are willing to work towards the resolution rather than blame each other. When things get difficult, it's not about me against you. It's about the two of us against the problem. It's about collaboration on both ends, not just me, one-sided, trying to pull the whole relationship on me. So it's the collaboration of two people who are willing to stay together, not just when things are easy and nice and pleasant, but also when it's hard. And this is about emotional availability. When you don't run away, when you stay, even if it's hard.
Okay,
And that is
beautiful.
and that is yeah, that is purely my experience. But of course we are different. And for different people, their vision of healthy relationship is different. So what about you? Like, what is your vision of an ideal, perfect, healthy relationship for you?
I think that you touched on a good point about emotional availability. For me, the most important thing would be emotional safety. So, from both sides, right? So, being able to express yourself, to be able to name what you're feeling, to be able to say what's going on for you in your life or in your thoughts, to be able to share without being judged or being labeled, just having that open space for each other. I think that would be first place, and supporting each other's goals, visions, dreams, ambitions, being there to uplift each other. But I think also a part of it would be to be able to give each other some feedback and or notice things that aren't working, and also being able to express that in a safe way. Yeah, I think those would be the most important pillars of a healthy relationship when we're talking about emotional health. And of course, yeah, just respecting each other's boundaries for sure, physically, emotionally, and being able to work through problems or disagreements or conflicts together. I think that would be my definition of a healthy relationship.
Yeah, I really like what you said. And also that the both of you can grow professionally,
Oh,
personally
yeah,
at
exactly.
being
Inspire
together.
growth in each other.
Yeah, triggering each other's best parts.
Right, right, absolutely. And I think that a big challenge for a lot of people, I know for me as well, is to really find a way that you communicate to each other. The older we get, the more baggage we have, and the more triggers we've built, and the more experiences and traumas that we've had. So I think a big challenge is also like, how do you learn how to communicate with each other in a way that fosters growth and connection rather than division and defensiveness. Can you touch on that a little bit? Like, how do you do that in your marriage, and how do you recommend people to communicate with each other?
Honestly, I think that those are a little bit two different things because it's one thing that
Okay,
I recommend other people. But then when I find myself in the situation where I get triggered, if later I catch myself like, am I really doing what I advise people to do? Come on.
but that's the thing, right? Sometimes we do more for others than when you get emotionally caught up in a situation yourself, you react a lot differently than yeah, than you would recommend. I think that's totally normal in a lot of
Yeah.
professions, actually. Like a house cleaner, a housekeeper could clean other people's houses, but then their own house might be very messy.
Right, exactly. Especially when you're flooded with emotions, your skills just disappear. And that's okay. The important thing is that you just return yourself to the place, to that awareness. Okay, I overreacted. I did this thing that's wrong.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And speaking, like saying that, not with the voice of an inner critic, but with
Mm-hmm.
the voice of a loving parent who is there, who's given their feedback to take care of you and to help you grow rather than to make you feel bad about yourself. So back to your question about like how to communicate is number one, again, it's about awareness. So whenever you get triggered, whenever you have any kind of emotional response, it doesn't mean that it's bad. This is something that you have to shut down, get rid of. This is something that you need to pay attention to because our emotions, and like I always try, like I like repeating that and tell my clients that we can lie to other people, we can lie to ourselves, but our emotions, they don't lie. They are the authentic part of ourselves. It's like a road sign that
Mhm.
tells you where to go. So, first of all, whenever you feel triggered by whatever, listen, feel those emotions and think, okay, is it because of something that happened to me in the past? Why am I reacting that way? What is this emotion trying to tell me? Is it because my boundary was violated by my partner? Or is it purely because of some past experience that I've had? Once you gain that awareness, again, awareness gives you a choice. How do I want to navigate this? And there is a 3-step nonviolent communication model, which I tell my clients, but I sometimes don't use it, but that's okay.
Thanks
Basically,
for being honest about that.
I am honest. And, I think that this podcast is also for women for women or for men, for anybody to see that it's not about perfection. It's not about
Mm.
like, oh, you're an expert in
Sure.
some sphere and you're all perfect, but it's about seeing that we all are people. We make
Right.
mistakes, even if we're experts or not experts, and that's okay. So the 3-step communication model is, first of all, register, be aware of what you feel. And
Mm-hmm.
if you are in a healthy relationship where you have that emotional safety,
Mm-hmm.
you should be safe enough, you should feel safe enough to express your feeling to your partner. Like, I feel upset. And
Mm-hmm.
then the second step is you say what you feel upset about, but you comment not on the person, but on the
Mm-hmm.
action. So if I say, well, you didn't send me a
Sure.
message like I asked you to, you did this bad thing, it doesn't exactly
It
trigger,
triggers
like a
defensiveness, right?
exactly,
Yeah, the
absolutely.
person will be like, "Oh, what did I do? Well, how did I didn't do that," or, it's not my
Right.
fault, or then you'll just be in a battle together.
Exactly. You're absolutely right. So when you comment on the action, like, I'm upset because I didn't receive the message that I was expecting or whatever. And then the third one, you express what you want. Like, I would like us to be able to communicate more often and be as precise as possible because it's about expectations. Like, sometimes we expect from other person and we expect that they can read our mind, but it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't really work that way. And women say, well, how does he not understand? Doesn't he know we've been married for 10 years and he doesn't even know what kind of chocolate I like? And that's okay. Perhaps he is the kind of person who, is not an expert on chocolate. His memory isn't as good as she wants him to. So it's about
Hmm.
expectations. We
Right.
think that another person knows
Things
what we
how we
want.
think. Right.
Exactly. So I statements, no you
Mm-hmm.
statements.
Mm-hmm.
Commenting on the message, on the action, not on the
Mm-hmm.
person, and then expressing what you actually want. Because very often people know what they don't want, but they don't always know what they actually want. And if
Right.
I don't know what I want, then how can somebody be able to guess that?
Sure. Yeah, that makes total sense. So, do you normally work with women, or do you only work with women? Do you work with men? And is there a difference between how men and women communicate or how they think?
Okay, I'm gonna reveal the secret. The thing is that it's really hard to generalize women
Sure.
and men.
Of
And
course.
I don't really like this statistics that overgeneralizing, like women do
Mm-hmm.
this, men do
Right.
this. Every single person is somebody new. It's like
Sure.
I'm starting with somebody from scratch. I don't work with men as much as with women, purely because they tend to, based on my experience with the men I worked with, they tend to keep things to themselves. They try to dissociate more, like, it's fine. Yeah, we had this fight, whatever, let's just try to forget it. While women, they usually want to address the issue. If it wasn't resolved, they keep overthinking about it, and they get into that spiral over and over. So women usually are more emotional, and they are more sensitive to when things go wrong. They are more sensitive to that, and they're more willing to address that issue. Well, men usually don't find it as that big of a deal. They just want to move on. So,
Sure.
and that is actually something that is in my marriage. When something that I feel is wrong, I want to address that. Let's sit down and discuss. While
Mm-hmm.
my husband is like, "What happened? Did something wrong happen?" Like, "Oh yeah, well, let's just move on. It's fine. We're good now."
Mm.
And that could be a place where men and women don't really match each other's expectations, where men just don't want to, continue that spiral, while women can't just relax and let it go because they want to have it resolved.
Resolved.
Yeah. So I would say that
Sure.
those are the biggest differences.
Right. Does that then have to do with how men and women are brought up in society, or does that have to do with masculine or feminine energy?
Honestly, I've worked with people, like I mentioned, from all continents, coming from different cultures, to the
Mm-hmm.
point of, like in India, where they still have this caste system,
Mm-hmm.
which I
Mm-hmm.
thought was history, but apparently it's not. So it's really hard to say whether it was about upbringing or something else. Definitely a lot of our personality, our identity, the way we act, the way we see ourselves and other people, like it starts in our childhood, the way we are brought up. But of course, the culture where we live, it also has its impact on our decisions. It's really hard to tell. I tend to think that everything starts in our childhood.
Right.
But when you're a child, you can't really make adult decisions. But when you're an adult, this is your responsibility to remember, okay, whatever my parents taught me, whatever happened to me when I was a child, now as an adult, I can change that.
Right.
And you having such an interesting background, like, do you feel like because of where you grew up, how you grew up, did you feel like it put some kind of expectations on you culturally, or the way you built relationship? Like, how is it for you?
Yeah, I think for me, I've had to switch a lot between cultures and ways of thinking. Yeah, I think I've had a taste of so many different kinds of energies, to put it that way. Because growing up in Asia, you're mostly, and this is once again a generalization, but generally in Asian culture, you're brought up as a woman to be very caring, very loving, very giving, maybe even over giving. You're taught to be very submissive and sometimes also keeping yourself small to please the other. A lot of Asian culture in most countries is also based on not letting the other person lose face. So you're always in tune with what another person needs and how you can make sure there's harmony together, and not necessarily being very strict or direct or confrontational. And yeah, that's how I've experienced growing up in Asia. Then I came to Europe and that was totally different. So in Europe, it's really more individualistic, and the boundaries that you set, you're more goal driven. You want to achieve things. You're very outspoken, very direct. And so yeah, I think that also being a single mom, I've also had to deal with the differences between masculine and feminine energy. So, on one hand, being the mother, and this is once again a lot of stereotyping, but usually the women are the caretakers and very caring for their children, being there emotionally. And then on the other hand, also having to have masculine energy and being there to protect her, being there to make all the decisions, move things forward, being the provider. So, yeah, I've had to switch between masculine and feminine energies, but also between cultural differences and mindsets. So, I think that's given me a lot of flexibility in how to choose in what situation how I would want to react or be. Yeah, I think that it's quite interesting now that we're talking about this. So,
I think it's a good point actually about it doesn't really matter whether it's a man or a woman, but we both like we all have this masculine and feminine energy. The
sure.
question is, how do we balance that with our partner? Because I've seen
Right.
different dynamics when a man was the caretaker, while a woman was very career driven and she was the provider, and they both
Mm-hmm.
liked it and they were comfortable with it.
Sure.
So coming back to your question, so whether it's the feminine or masculine energy or whether it's the upbringing, I think it's a little bit of each of those. The question is, how can you balance it? How can you consciously use what you have in order to meet your partner halfway?
Yeah, so I think that probably it's about polarity. So whether or not you are the male doing the caregiving or the female being the provider or the other way around or in the same-sex marriage, I guess it all comes down to where is the polarity in that case, isn't it?
Absolutely. And this is not a static thing. Relationships are dynamic, and a woman can be the caretaker and the provider at some point, and then say she has a baby, and then they kind of switch places when the man is the provider and she's the caretaker. So it's not something that is there all the time. And very important is that people remain flexible and willing to adjust to the new circumstances, because we as humans, we develop, we change constantly. So the dynamic in relationship changes. And people shouldn't be, sometimes people are scared. They say, well, things have changed, especially when they have a child, when the child goes to school, when the child graduates, when the child leaves the home. Relationship change. And just we evolved in a way that we want things to be stable. We don't want any changes. We're used to something that's stable, whether it's good or not, but we know how to handle the stability. But when changes come, we get scared, but change doesn't necessarily mean that it's something bad.
Mhm.
When something shifts in your dynamic, it doesn't mean that it's bad, it's just something new. And crises, this is something that's going to happen in relationships. The thing is, how do you handle those changes? How do you handle those shifts? Masculine, feminine energy changes. Whatever happens in your relationship, how willing both of you are to work together to kind of handle whatever is going on. And this
Right.
is the most important thing. And also, like, how do we reconnect? How do we find that common ground, this common language? How do we
Hmm.
stay together regardless of what's going on in our relationship?
Sure. But then that does bring me to the next question, which is like, how do you then know when there is no repair possible, when it's time to part ways? I mean, how far do you go in trying to repair something? And how do you know that it's not reparable anymore?
This is a very important question. And again, before I give you my feedback, I want to ask you about your relationship. How did you know that, okay, this is the point when I need to pull away, when I need to stop this?
You mean when I was when we were talking about the toxic situation? Yeah, I guess the defining factor for me was that I wasn't growing anymore, that there were more disadvantages than advantages. But the most important thing about it was that the other person wasn't open to self-reflection. So, yeah, I think that was for me the defining factor when I gave it so many chances and wanted to work things out so many times, but then realized that that person would just not want to take on their part.
So basically, you noticed that it wasn't balanced, that you were trying to meet them halfway,
Hmm.
but they didn't put as much effort. And one more thing, a very important thing that you mentioned earlier when you were describing your relationship is you said that you stopped liking yourself. And I think
Hmm.
that this is a very, very important red flag, that if you ever have doubts, and if you ever, first of all, if you start thinking, is it something reparable? This is already you have to listen closely, because when that question pops up in your mind, I guess the situation is serious enough. And like I mentioned earlier, our emotions, not coaches, not our friends, not anybody else, but our emotions are our road signs that tell us, what should I do next? If you're willing to listen. But when you find yourself in a situation where I stop liking myself in this relationship, where in a healthy relationship you should continue, grow, it's not just about what your partner does, but it's also about how do I feel in this relationship with my partner. So when you feel like you don't like yourself anymore, when you're not happy anymore, when it's not balanced, when you give more than you receive, when you give more than your partner does, I think that that could be that point where it's not reparable anymore.
Right. Then it's better to part ways.
Right.
Right. Makes sense. Yeah. And then, if someone feels stuck, like what if you just don't know, right? You're thinking, okay, can we repair this? Can we fix this? And you start going back and forth. And sometimes you find yourself stuck in a pattern. How do you recognize that pattern? And how do you then, how do you break free from this pattern?
This is a good question. People remain in patterns. I think the problem is not about breaking free from the pattern. It's about recognizing that you're in a pattern. And once you do that, once you have that awareness, like I mentioned earlier, then it's much easier to break free of it. The biggest tricky thing is that we usually are not aware that we are stuck in some kind of pattern. Sometimes we don't see that for a reason. Women come to coaching with me and we clearly see that pattern. And coaching is not about pushing or pulling the client. It's about, me being with a flashlight, shining light in the places that they can't see. But for some of them, it's just so painful to face that reality that they are incapable of seeing that truth. So it's not just about finding yourself in that pattern, realizing that you're stuck. It's about, okay, how ready I am to actually see that. Because the reason why we have those defense mechanisms, it's something that defends us. It's not something bad. It's not something that has to be broken. So there has to be, first of all, enough internal resources to face that truth. And it's painful. And not everybody is willing to face that pain, to sit with it. So
Right.
I would say that the key ingredient here is time. If a woman is not capable of noticing these patterns, it's for a reason. Maybe it's not time yet. That lesson is not learned, it's not integrated, she hasn't digested what is going on, even though, and it might sound crazy, but even though the situation is toxic and unhealthy, unless she is ready to face that pain, she is gonna remain there in that situation.
So you're saying facing the pattern isn't enough. You have to be ready to face the pain within yourself before you can choose to remove yourself from the pattern or to dissolve the pattern. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. And I have two types of clients, those who are just love my session, those who come to me and say, okay, I don't want to see you ever again in my life. And the first
I
category,
can't imagine that ever happening.
these people are the kind who are just unable to face the pain because my
Right.
sessions, they are about honesty. And I'm here to support
Mm-hmm.
women, here to support clients and give all of the love, support, and care that I can give them. But if I see that there is an unhealthy pattern, I'm going to show
Mm-hmm.
it. It's about honesty.
Sure,
And
exactly.
some people can see that.
Mm-hmm.
Some people just can't because the pain would just be so overwhelming that it would break them. And those are the
Right.
kind of people who prefer
Right.
familiarity to,
Sure.
uh, to a healthy
To the
relationship.
alternative. Right. I get it. So what are then some of the most common patterns that you come across?
I think the number one would be women holding on to hopes rather than
Okay.
reality. So he will change. I'm sure that if
Mm.
I try a little bit harder, if I put a little bit more effort into this relationship, then he's gonna change. Then I
Mm-hmm.
can fix it. And here's the key, I can fix it. Not
I
we
see.
both can do something together, but I
Mm-hmm.
want it and I want to fix it. And there's also a little bit about trying to control their partner. Like I can fix it in a way that I can do something that will influence my partner's behavior. So that is also about trying to control how their partner responds. But the painful thing, again, speaking about pain, is that we can't really control other people. We can only control our actions. So the number one thing is that women believe what they hear and they prefer to hear that sweet, whatever their partner tells them, that sweetness. And they just want to, they put effort into not noticing the toxicity, the difficult and painful part of their relationship, which they hope they can fix.
Right. So why do women want to hold on then to such a relationship and go through so much trouble of trying to fix the person or fix the situation or maybe even change themselves or influence the behavior of their partners? Why are women so tenacious in doing that?
We've already mentioned it a little bit earlier that it's not all bad. And when there is a good part in their relationship, which usually there is a good part, because if it was 100% bad, they wouldn't be in that relationship. So they tend to hold on to that good part and they're willing to put up with whatever comes along with it. The pain, that toxic attitude from their partners. Again, the roots can be back in our childhood. Like I had this client and everything, all of the stories, like I've got the permission from the clients to share, of course, without their names and surnames and phone number. So I had this client. She was in this mysterious thing in her life. She would constantly attract men with alcohol addiction. Just, we couldn't understand why, what's going on. And then she shared that as she was a child, her father used to drink. So she was trying to do something to prevent that grown man from drinking, to save him. So it's not just about the partner, the people who surround us. It's about us viewing ourselves. So her identity was, I'm the person who is trying to save somebody from alcohol addiction. And she would attract the kind of men who would provide her with that opportunity, because this is also about the identity shift, and not everybody is ready to do that. What if there's nobody to save? What if there's nothing to fix? Who am I then? If I'm used to myself being a fixer and a rescuer, then what's going to be left? And this is very painful. And like that's like that point of the identity shift can be even more painful than letting go of something that no longer serves you.
Sure. Wow, that is so deep. It goes really far in, yeah, that it's not just about the way you think or changing what you say. It's really about wanting to transform and becoming a whole different person in order to, yeah, get that fulfillment in life, in your relationships.
Right.
Yeah, that's some powerful insights. Yeah, amazing.
And if you were to like think back at your relationship, you mentioned that in Asian culture, a woman, the identity is someone who takes care of everybody, who's trying to please. How did it reflect on the way you saw yourself in a relationship? Like what used to be or what is your identity? How do you see yourself in a relationship?
All these deep questions, Dada. Oh my gosh.
Like that's what happens in the sessions, and not everybody is willing to withstand that pain and depth.
I could see why people sometimes say no, I'm joking. I'm totally joking. I'll go down that path with you, sure. Growing up, I never really thought about that. I just thought, okay, I'm attracted to the person and I'm talking more about chemistry, and then it would just go from there. I wouldn't necessarily consciously think about my identity. But then, yeah, I guess later on, thinking about your identity in relationships was something that happened for me after I got a wake-up call of being in a toxic relationship, and actually before that being in a relationship where the dynamic was totally different. And I think every relationship that I encountered has brought me a lot of wisdom and insight into myself, actually, and in what my traumas were and fears were, and like you said, how I saw myself. So, yeah, every experience has actually brought me closer to finding out who I am as a woman and what's important to me. And so, yeah, earlier we mentioned a couple of things that I thought were really important in a relationship. And yeah, I think that would then be more of my identity of someone who is more conscious about what she wants and what matters to her.
The important thing is not just go through pain, but also to learn from it rather than, let your suffering be in vain. Pain is the greatest, unfortunately, the greatest teacher. And that's the services I provide during my sessions. So um, basically, whenever you feel stuck in a relationship, when you don't know, should I stay? Should I go? Should I change something? You should always ask yourself, who am I in this relationship? Am I the fixer, the only fixer? Am I the victim? Am I the abuser? Am I the equal partner? And that will also give you like a vision. Okay, how do I want to move forward? Is it
Right.
something, is it the relationship where I want to stay and be in that role? Maybe this is the relationship where I want to stay but change the role. And who do I want to be? Not just about who do I want my partner to be.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that of latest, I've noticed a more shift in thinking about how to become more aware of my femininity, of now that my daughter's been growing up and she's 18, being more self-reliant. I'm not no longer forced to stay in that masculine role. And that has also kind of shifted my thinking of, okay, what have I really done with my femininity? And I've been used to going headstrong with other men and laying down the law and being the decision maker or being the defender. And having had troublesome interactions with the male species, I've become very guarded, against that and very protective. So I've put up walls, and the emotional availability has suffered from that. So I guess I'm more coming into this phase where I want to discover what it's like to become more emotionally available, to tap into that vulnerability more, to discover what it's like to be more feminine and to surrender more to masculine energy. And at the same time, preserving my own self-worth and knowing what I deserve. So I think that's a bit of the shift that I'm making. Like you said, not being so much in this victim role anymore, in saying like, okay, this was done to me, or I was in this toxic relationship and this guy just totally abused me, but also taking that accountability and responsibility for the decisions that you made and for staying in that dynamic. Not necessarily, like you said, with a critical voice of you made the wrong decision or you wasted your time, but more like I wasn't conscious at the time to make certain decisions. But nevertheless, I also made that decision. And I also had my part in sustaining that dynamic and to step more out of that victim role and becoming more empowered.
I really admire that you mentioned accepting responsibility, that you chose to stay in that dynamic. This is the key part. This is the hard part because it's much easier to say, he did this to me, he's the abuser, that's his fault, rather than accepting your share of responsibility and the fact that you are willing to do that, realizing that, okay, at that point, you felt like that was the best thing to do, acknowledging that you've done the best that you could. Now you come to building relationship from the point of, first of all, accepting responsibility and knowing that, okay, whatever happens to me, it's not something that happens to me, it's something that I allow to happen. And then speaking about vulnerability, women often ask me, well, how do I become more vulnerable? How do I let those guards down? And I have a question, well, are you willing to, like, are you ready to potentially experience pain? Because like I'm
Right.
all for keeping those guards up if you're not ready to experience that pain. If you have just gone through a severe, harsh breakup, you're hurting, you haven't healed yet. I don't feel like I'm in place to help you, like to help you show your vulnerability
I
because
see. Right. That
it's
makes
not the
sense.
right time.
Not the right time.
So if you feel like you've healed enough, if you feel like you're strong enough and you can lean on yourself,
Mm-hmm.
then showing your vulnerability will, it will come natural. You won't have to have like a manual of how do I become vulnerable. It will just be natural. You will just be your authentic self. And speaking about your personal relationship when you have learned something. So now you are not the person who started that relationship. You are not the person who remained in that relationship because now you know what you didn't know back then. Now you have more wisdom. So, in any case, it's not going to be like it used to be before, simply because now you can't unsee the things
No,
that
exactly.
are already in your awareness.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. It brings me to a funny story that one of my other guests on the podcast told me. Like, if you walk by a bush and you suddenly see a snake on the road and you flinch in fear of this snake attacking you, but once you approach the snake and you see that's not really a snake, it's a branch of a tree and it can't hurt you or do anything else, you can't go back to seeing it as a snake.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really, really wise. And thank you for sharing that story. And we don't see things the way they are. We see things the way we are, with our own mental filters that we adopt, that we build based on the experiences that we've had. So it's also good to try to distinguish between, is this is what I'm seeing my opinion or is it a fact? And
Mm,
this is a good grounding exercise, good for overthinking, for overanalyzing. Just
right,
try to have that reality check. Is this really happening, or do I just think that it's happening?
right. Yeah, good one. Definitely good to be to reflect, to be more present, I guess, to be more aware of what are your emotions really telling you, what are your thoughts telling you, what are you choosing to think at that moment.
Right.
Yeah, very nice, very nice. So we're coming almost to the end, I guess, of our time together. Dada, well, I could continue to ask you a million more questions. If someone watching this thinks that, they would love to connect with you or get to know you, how can they reach out to you?
Well, they can just access the link, my Instagram link, which the one that I gave you. So they can just click on Instagram. They can connect with me. It's all in Ukrainian, but obviously I can speak English, and this is how we can connect. And also, I wanted to recommend this book just while I remember for everybody who is struggling with relationship or who is not struggling with a relationship but want to maintain it healthy.
Mm-hmm.
There's this book by John Gottman,
Mm-hmm.
Principles of a Happy Marriage. I'm just translating from Ukrainian. So that could be also something for people who perhaps don't feel like they want to have coaching or talk with anybody, but
Mm-hmm.
those people
Okay.
who I can also send you the description of it, which is good to read for everybody.
Do you see yourself then more as a coach or a therapist? And what's the main difference?
So in Ukraine, I work as a psychologist and a Gestalt therapist because there are different legal consideration. If those are like international clients, it's more like a coach. That's how I position myself. But regardless of the labels, imagine that you already feel healthy, you feel good, but you just go to the gym to work out, to remain good and perhaps even improve what you already have. Therapy is more deep. It's when I don't really feel good and I want to get to that healthy place.
I see.
So it both in therapy, counseling, and coaching, we work towards getting a person to reach their goal. It's just therapy is usually a little deeper, even though my coaching style can also get a little too
Therapeutic.
deep, exactly, and painful.
Right,
And again,
right.
speaking about a gym, imagine that you go to a gym and you just take those super light weights and you just, and you don't really put any effort. But that means that your muscles are not growing, that you're not
Right.
really improving. Whereas when you know, gradually increase that load, when you really try, when you feel that pain, it means that your muscles are growing, that you're improving, doing that you start to do something that you were not capable of doing before, rather than just repeating what you can already do.
Exactly. Yeah, that's wonderful. That's a great analogy to give. Thank you so much for sharing your insights, your knowledge. I've really enjoyed this connection with you and this time talking about this topic.
Yeah, thank you so
And
much for inviting me. It's such an amazing and interesting opportunity. I've really enjoyed it and had lots of good emotions.
yes, wonderful. And we'll be sure to have a real cup of tea soon, right? Either
Oh,
in Sweden or here in Holland.
absolutely. I'd love that.
All right. Well, have yourself a wonderful, wonderful day, and we'll be in touch soon.
Thank you so much. Thank you.